Interdimensional War by Dagaan Galacticos. Chapter 9. Journal entry, January 10, 2005. I let myself into Yvonne's place with the key on top of the fire extinguisher box in the hall of her second-floor condo. I knew the key would still be there. Yvonne is very methodical. As there is a mail slot for the mail and a parking space for the car, there is a hiding place for the key. That it's the most obvious place in the hall to put a key doesn't matter a bit. I got there early, thinking I'd start dinner and surprise her. She was meeting with a late client at her office in the same building as a large Santa Fe spa. Yvonne has done very well for herself in the last few years. She has her own business with 2 partners. She has her condo nearly paid off. She's shopping around for a new car. I'm proud of her. I mean that she's been my girlfriend and is so together. That she used to read tarot cards through an internet site where she had a 4-star reputation as a psychic rubbed me the wrong way, but I'd learned to keep my mouth shut about her New Age assumptions. What is this thing about women all needing to be healers and wise priestesses? Isn't being women enough? I'll see a photo of a pretty, cheerful woman in her mid-20s on a poster advertising karmic counseling and life enhancement when the woman hasn't had her first broken heart. I used to hear Yvonne blathering away on the phone telling some poor girl whose ex was 2-timing her that the guy would be back sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas, but if the guy didn't leave the new flame before Groundhog Day, it meant that a new love was on the horizon for the poor heartbroken, bleeding woman. I'd tried to reason with Yvonne about this, saying that someone left in the lurch or living with the aftermath of confusion and pain that is common when most relationships end will clutch at straws to avoid the heartache. To offer them hope is cruel and inhuman punishment. Someone heartbroken enough to pay good money to a complete stranger to find out when love will come again would cling to any crumb of hope to postpone romantic death. But this was treason to Yvonne. She believed herself to be a visionary healer with special karmic connections to a Russian witch. I put a pot of water on to boil, slit 2 bags of frozen mussels, shrimp and clams, and chopped up squid and octopus, something she and I had always liked. I poured this into a colander to thaw and poured some white basmati rice into another pot of water and lit the burner and popped open a liter of medium expensive red wine. I unpacked a large red onion and a bunch of garlic, some chives and cilantro, and laid these on a cutting board. I pulled out a double fistful of asparagus stalks and laid them aside. I pulled a good sharp knife out of her knife stand and began dicing. Yvonne's living room windows face west onto the sage and chamisa-covered prairie that rolls away for 10 miles to the Jemez Mountains. There were patches of snow among the sage and chamisa bushes. It looked cold and lonely out there, and there wasn't anything to eat either, so I felt pretty good in Yvonne's warm, brightly lit kitchen. I wandered over to the stack of technological devices sitting on top of Yvonne's huge TV and considered putting on a CD. After looking at a few of her CDs and seeing titles like Utopian Mind Message and Ancient Mayan Yoga Workout and Cloud 10, I wandered back to my cooking. I was chopping up the onion and garlic when Yvonne walked in to find steaming pots on the stove and the smell of wine and seafood wafting through her living room. She looked clean and radiant in turquoise silk bib overalls and a short-sleeved white blouse. Her hair was mahogany, still damp from a shower. She was carrying a couple of clipboards, some books, and a small bag of groceries. She smiled uncertainly at seeing me cooking in her kitchen as I used to do back when. Chopped up octopus on a bed of basmati, salad, and vino. How's that sound? I smiled cheerily at her. Here, she frowned and handed me her clipboards. The rice is turning into glue. It's boiling too fast. She stalked across her kitchen, grabbed a sponge out of the sink, and wiped the cutting board and completely took possession of the kitchen. She turned down the burner, saying, "And you have to saute the onions and garlic before you cook the octopus. She needlessly dumped the pan of seafood in a bowl and started chopping up the onion and garlic herself. I could see she was nervous at having me there. Maybe it hadn't been such a good idea to come over early and have her find me in her space. I set the clipboards and book down on a chair and took a deep breath. I'd pictured a long, slow kiss as she walked into the kitchen. "Long day, eh?" I asked her. "Oh, no, not really," she said airily, taking advantage of the opportunity for contradiction. "I often have people who want treatments after work, and it's extra money. What did you do, quit early just to get over here and thaw the squid?" "Yeah." My spirits sagged a bit. "I stopped by Intervisions to get some hand lotion and picked up this video called Bringers of the Dawn I've been hearing about." She pulled a cassette out of the paper bag and smiled her sweet and sour smile. She was starting over. "You want to watch it?" she asked, trying out a real smile. "Sure," I said and grinned. I reached out and stroked her hair. She leaned into my touch, murmuring, "The rice needs water." I circled her waist and pulled her to me. She let me and said, as in, "No." So I kissed her and she pecked me back, flicked a look at the rice, and then stared at me a little aghast that we were doing this again. I looked into her dark green eyes, so familiar and known, and the 2 years of our alienation seemed to dissolve away from me. I could see all her mixed feelings moving around inside her, wanting the intimacy back, fearing the alienations, wanting the reliable warmth, fearing giving up the independence. She let me really kiss her and then started kissing back. We took some long, deep looks at each other. Yvonne put on the video and we ate off the coffee table. She looked farm girl cute in the shiny turquoise overalls. Her new look, with the short hair and defined clothing, brought a quickness and a lightness to her that I had only seen in passing before. The long, elegant lines of her forehead and cheeks, her long, smooth arms. It was all so familiar, but also now new. We ate and watched the video and moved closer and closer until we were all tangled up and sighing all over each other. This happened before second glasses of wine. I never got what the video was about. It was difficult for me to pay attention. By the time they were bringing in the dawn, Yvonne had taken off my shirt and was pressing her lavender bra against my chest. Red hair, turquoise pants, lavender bra, pink lips, green eyes. I was drowning in technicolor. We moved to her bedroom where she punched on a CD called Chants from the Pleiadian Code, which sounded pleasantly like angels humming in a tile bathroom. Listening was supposed to synchronize the two halves of your brain and access your supermind. All I know is that making love with Yvonne accessed my supermind. She says that because she's a Scorpio and I'm a Capricorn, we connect to spirit through sensual emotion. I don't even know what that means, since I was taught that sensual emotion is illegal and frowned on by the spirit, but I do know that for me, heaven has to be similar to making out on Yvonne's couch, or I'm not going. I was floating on a purple cloud, my body humming with the angels, when I heard Yvonne's voice as if in the distance. "Get lower and move up a little. No, not like that. Over to the side. There, that's it. No, to the left. Here. Hold me like this. It takes me a while, but after it gets going, it's fine." And it all came back to me. Yvonne's problem with having an orgasm, or more specifically, the orgasm Yvonne thinks she deserves. I did what she wanted to avoid an argument because I knew that after a while I could just follow my feelings and she'd be happy. Yvonne only really had a real orgasm once in a while, but when she did, it was really historical, and she lived craving that one experience. When it happened, her body convulsed in spine-jarring snaps, and her breath expelled from her lungs in quick rushes and little helpless screams that jumped out of her like little animals running off into the night. It was amazing. But between these experiences, she sometimes couldn't come in any but a superficial way and became frustrated and very demanding. This was not one of her orgasmic nights. The night she'd spent at my house a few weeks before had really been one of her orgasmic nights. That's probably what led to our taking another step. Eventually, she quivered a little and was still. We were all tangled up. One of her breasts was cupped in my armpit, and I could taste her natural shampoo. The intimate love feeling was threatening to unravel between us by her failure, or my failure, as she probably thought it, for her to reach orgasm. She eventually sighed and turned over to sleep. "I have to leave early in the morning, sweetie, and it's trash day," she said in her deep, genital voice. "Could you roll my bin out front?" She added a sweet little grace note at the end. "Uh-huh," I heard my voice say. The orgasmic opiate that comes over me when I make it with Yvonne was flooding my veins, and I could barely understand English. "And on Thursday, Jill, you know my partner, is showing her art at the office, and I told her I would help hang the pictures. I don't want to go alone, so could you come with me?" "Uh-huh." "You're such a doll," she murmured into my neck. "I love the feel of you in my bed," she added, turned over, extended her full, warm, rounded body against my side, and clasped her kitten around my leg. She had me purring and making deals in my sleep. I remember a woman once telling me that she was going to tell me a secret about women, a secret that she said she shouldn't tell me because it would be too revealing. The secret was that young girls' first experience of males was as boy dolls who did everything the girl told them to do, so that when a grown-up woman had a man's confidence in a love situation, she began telling the man who, how, and what he was supposed to be. This memory was vaguely sparked by Yvonne saying, "You're such a doll." But before I could really grok it, I was asleep. I didn't fully realize I was out of body until I was going down through the roof of Luev's house and into her bedroom. I was still feeling the warmth of Yvonne's body against my side as I became aware of Luev sitting up in bed in a lotus posture, fully awake and eyes fully open, staring at me. I settled into a seated posture in front of her as though this were a prearranged agreement. The now familiar sight of Luev's almond eyes with their golden lights, her pursed smiling lips, the intelligence of her face, and an enveloping love that made me feel really wanted, brought me back in a rush to this other world, this other me. The fine etheric electricity that is Luev and I in Ovvala, and the focused, purposeful identity it brings out in me came back as our breathing synchronized. I was a finer me with Luev in Ovvala, more interested and determined to accomplish something, more aware of being an extension of the living universe. A fleeting sense of offering Yvonne a piece of my heart and its being ignored was contrasted by the thrilling sense of Luev accepting and reaching out for that same offering. Luev's Ovvalan face, like a classic profile carved on the wooden prow of some ancient Peloponnesian ship, moved me into this other identity, as though a different set of senses, a second attention, were suddenly awakened in me. We looked into each other's eyes and resumed the communication we had last had as though it hadn't been interrupted, and the different identity she invoked in me awoke. Though my body was curled up around Yvonne's bed at that moment, the stream of consciousness that resumed with Luev was total. It took all my attention and interest. I was totally there. "You are right on time," Luev said softly in a low, musical voice and smiled at me sadly. "I was sending you a signal to meet me." Something was different in her presence, and I slowly became aware of it. She was very serious. Sharp lines of intention vibrated in her aura. An awareness of the problems in Ovvala relayed themselves through her emotions into mine. The babies deformed from the plutonium in the water, the foul suicide sickness, the Nazi-like Falkar, who roamed the cities at will, snatching people up into their discs, the obscene display at the cafe with the sealed demon woman, the dead sea dragons that were washing up on the shores all over Ovvala because of the warming oceans. All these images converged into a strange and intense sadness and anger, fear and horror in her eyes. I became very sober looking at her and felt the depths of her emotion. I realized at that moment that she was vulnerable to the foul sickness, that our happiness wasn't guaranteed. It was as though love itself was being threatened in her awareness by dark, insidious forces, and I was forced to consider that she could change, give up, and begin to float off into the stars, lose her will to live. She sensed my awareness of these feelings in her, and we silently measured the possibilities. Since the encounter with the Siddhe and Isult, I realized that she had been thinking deeply about things. She had been empowered and altered to a radical degree by being forced to realize that the myths of her childhood weren't fiction, but reality. Only this reality was in a different dimension, just as it was for me. Simultaneously, she had become saddened at learning the depth of the problem. She had to act or die. For the first time, the thought crossed my mind that I could lose her. "We must go to the Draco Council," she said when she realized I could sense her, understand her state of mind. We sat in silence for a while. The information that had been relayed to us by the Siddhe hit me with renewed force. I remembered the severe cautioning Isult and Dagaan had given us. They had said that our going near the Dracos could be dangerous. Isult and Dagaan believed that our combined energies would make us invisible to the Draco guards, but this had yet to be proved. I remembered my terror when the weird amoebas from the bar had stuck to me and followed me home. It was possible we could be secretly followed back to our homes by the Adric, who sounded a bit more cunning than amoebas. It was not impossible that we could be captured somehow in the astral and made to reveal information about the Siddhe underground. I wondered, if my astral body were imprisoned, would I become a vegetable in my sleep and stay that way for, say, 30 years, lying in a bed in a hospital, no one able to explain why I was in a coma? As I write this, I realize that I didn't take any of those warnings very seriously. I just thought it was all a dream. I still believed that all reason for fear would evaporate with waking up. But her presence, the ungraspable miracle of Luev's pregnancy, created such a bond of love and intimacy that I just wanted to bask in the glow of that feeling. The astounding fact of the existence of Ovvala, of Luev herself. Whether dream or hallucination was now becoming threatened. If the Ovvalans and the Siddhe were a dream, were the forces which threatened them a dream as well? Could one dream annihilate another? Would my love for Luev lead me into a nightmare of losing it? These were the kinds of confused thoughts going through my mind. Apparently the Draco Council met only rarely, when new plans were introduced. The Siddhe felt that knowing what those plans were could help protect the Siddhe underground and possibly prevent whatever the Dracos were about to do. The miracle of our love and the existence of the Siddhe all added up to a duty to go to the Draco Council. It wasn't really necessary for Luev to voice these conclusions for me to get it. Before signaling me to meet her, Luev had been in communication with the Siddhe, and their part of the plan was activated. We held hands and gazed deeply into one another's eyes in preparation for our journey. We activated the instructions relayed to us during the council and became very quiet and focused. Streams of information relayed during the blue stone transmission coursed through my mind. I became aware of astral techniques for creating cloaks of invisibility, escape strategies, how to cut travel time between a point of origin and a destination, how to instantly get back to my physical body. Lines of energy led to the Draco chamber in a living vibratory vortex. I also recalled instructions about the astral nature of the Draco forces, the Adric, the Draco psychic police, and the bats, their counterpart on Earth. Our greatest weapon, however, was supposed to be the human Ovvalan harmonic created by the baby growing in Luev and by our love for one another. This harmonic love was somehow beyond the ability of the Dracos to either perceive or track because it fused with the universal intelligence and couldn't be separated from the universal. The Dracos are an illegal energy form in the universe. Their time of existence as Tyrannosaurs, 50 million years, is past, and their responsibility to evolve in new and different ways is overdue. This rogue band of spirits that made up the Dracos were psychic pirates out to devour Ovvalan human energy, even though the Draco were only astral memories of existence. They were re-existing through the possessed bodies of Ovvalans and humans working through corporate power and propaganda. They are like poltergeists that refuse to believe they are dead and like craven junkies hunger for nearness to the solar blood, warmth of life, and the physical nearness to the ancient pools of their ancestral blood, the petroleum under the ground of our planet. With one last look of love and suspense, Luev stuck her tits out, pouted menacingly, and tossed back her hair, smiled at Lian softly, saying, "Karulia." Her entire will surrounded the baby within her and her love for Ovvala, as well as our extraterrestrial love and our new allies in the Siddhe. This activated my love of the earth, of trees, of life, and my allegiance to democracy, and my hopes for a humanity free of oppressors. We were each very self-contained and focused when we slowly floated up through the ceiling of her house.